Welcome back.
Welcome back. Hello, family. This is Renee,
This is Kyrie.
and welcome to Hear Us Out. Thank you so much for subscribing, and to our new listeners, thank you for being here and for hearing us out.
Thank you. And before we begin, I would just like to read, as we know, because we're reading Dune right now.
Mm-hmm.
I said in the first episode that I wouldn't read all of the starting quotes and
Right.
everything for each chapter, but I think this one is good enough to warrant our attention.
Right.
And it says here, greatness is a transitory experience. It is never consistent. It depends in part upon the myth-making imagination of humankind. The person who experiences greatness must have a feeling for the myth he is in. He must reflect what is projected upon him, and he must have a strong sense of the sardonic. This is what uncouples him from belief in his own pretensions. The sardonic is all that permits him to move within himself. Without this quality, even occasional greatness will destroy a man.
Mm. Mm. Good.
Yes.
Good day.
That was the first thing I read.
Uh-huh.
And it was like, this is the best book ever. It's the best book ever.
Yes, we are continuing with Dune
With Dune,
by Frank Herbert, and so yeah, that's what
yes.
we are.
And pretty much the entire quote is like, it was without a heavy dose of realism,
Mm-hmm.
without a little bit of cynicism,
Yes, definitely.
even the slightest bit of greatness, quote unquote, will be enough to unmake anyone who takes it.
It's true.
So look at us.
Yeah.
Look at the world.
Yes.
Look at,
Yeah. Pick a person who we consider to be great, and that's
like how many times we talked about like, we don't want to do anything because we're too busy, stuck in our past.
That's right.
With the pyramids and all that stuff.
Right.
We got a little taste of greatness.
Right.
Right.
And now
we haven't moved since.
That's just right. We figured that the work has already been done or something.
And, yeah. And the entire because revisiting Dune now. The first time I read Dune, it was like apotheosis. It was like reaching that place that you never thought was actually there.
Yes.
Because everything felt so off. Everything felt wrong.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And you start to blame yourself because it's like, because in reading, a lot of our work, things like by, Marimba Ani and Baruti and all these other people, that we've revisited, for everything that they were, I always felt like something was missing. From those particular, ideas on what we're supposed to do.
Right. And I've expressed that too. I'm like, it always seems as if, as if it's supposed to be this one more step we needed to take. And for some reason, with all the books that we read, I say it all the time, it's this one more, it's this next step. I know it's there. I just don't.
Yeah, and for me, it was more where it's from. Like it just the first step.
For you, it was the first step, right?
Right. Because like everything felt. I mean, you start to blame yourself because it's like, am I the problem here? Where's this coming from? Right. Where's this idea? Because it's like I don't like it's everything always boils down to we just need to kill all.
Right.
Everything always boils down to that. Well, and it's always like I don't want to do that. I don't think that's right. And then you ask yourself, like, well, is it because of me?
Right.
Like, am I a coward for not wanting to take that step after everything that and and you question yourself.
Right.
Which is a logical thing to do, but it didn't change the overall fact that I was feeling like something was off, something was missing.
Right.
And then when I read Dune for the first time, it was like all that thing that was missing was just splayed out perfectly. Right. Just in this first book, in the first couple of chapters, in that Dune is a book that plays with your perception.
Right.
And that, that says that, power is perception. That the Reverend Mothers that we talked about in the first chapter, their entire power comes from, their perception and their ability to be able to, perceive a person and understand the person enough to to know the type of voice that is necessary to compel them to action, even beyond themselves. So to control themselves to such an extent that they're able to choose the gender of their own child. All of this are perceptual abilities that that they have, and perception is one of the core themes of Dune, and is one of the themes that really gets explored in Paul's part of the book, and really in the part that we're going to be talking about today. Because in the first episode really talked about the first chapter,
right?
The first couple chapters that really centered around Paul,
right, and the
and
test,
him, and his test, the gum jobber and all that
right?
stuff, and how you know it was imperative for him to be able to recognize where the threat is.
Right.
That was the test. Recognition. Of self and all the other things, and all the things that a human being is supposed to recognize, all coalesced in these single moments that has stuck with him. But throughout the rest of the chapter, we see his father wrestling with his identity of self, being caught up in his trap, knowing that he is there and feeling like, well, I'm going to die.
Right.
And he knows that they're struggling. He knows that, they're struggling to find their footing, that this isn't the type of position that one can survive in.
Right.
And everyone around him is bringing him these reports, and he's trying to, be the leader, that his house needs, that his son needs, that the entirety of his planet needs.
He needs to be great, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But he knows that it's all fleeting.
Yeah.
And his mother, Jessica, knows as well, being a Reverend Mother, knows that they are on the back foot.
Right.
And that, if they don't play their cards right, it's as if for all of them. And you really get to see how a lot of how this new situation is
making them. That's right.
Unmaking
them.
Finding, knowing that, this is going to be bloody.
Right.
That this is going to be a battle. That this isn't one that they're able to survive. Knowing that they've been outplayed, but trying their best, to maintain. And it's fascinating, really. To see, and it's refreshing more than anything, to see a people who can actually admit when they're down.
Right.
And can admit that they are stuck, and can admit that they have to move regardless.
Right.
And it's that in itself.
That gives,
that recognition that gives Paul the space that he needs. Because his parents aren't feeding him any lies.
Right.
They aren't telling him that, we're going to make it out of this. And, Paul has to reassure his father at one point. When his father is telling is telling him about how tired he is.
Right.
And how, his propaganda corps is one of the greatest in all of it.
Right, of all right.
In all of the Imperium, because he has to tell these people who has suffered under Harkonnen rule.
Right.
That he's going to be their savior. He's going to be the one. And his father, the Duke Leto, is a man of honor. And he plans to be exactly what, they tell him, that he's telling these people on this planet what he's going to be. But it's all just so frivolous when you're speaking to a people who have suffered for generations, and now you need them to follow you. You need their help.
Right.
And you're trying to win their favor. And the only way you can do it is through propaganda, through this myth building. And he knows that it's all just so empty, and he's empty,
right?
And he's just telling his son that you're gonna have to take up for this. He literally tells his son that I need to be able to tell this to somebody,
right?
That
I have to confess this, right?
I'm not going to make it out of this, And Jessica, is like, she knows, and she just wants for there to be a way out.
Right.
And there is a way out. For the house to go rogue. To travel into wild space and to become one of the rogue houses, not, attached to the Imperium. But she would rather that than this. But the Duke is a man who is willing to die by the sword he chooses to live by. And if he's the Duke of House Atreides, he's the Duke Leto, this is his right. And if he can't live this way, if his house can't exist this way, then it will die this way.
Right.
And I'm like, and all it's just so refreshing. Like things like principle and moral strength. And it's like none of these things matter in the grand scheme of things. Mm-hmm. And they know that.
Right.
But they also know that, this is how they've decided to live. Mm-hmm. And they're willing to go down on that. And it's like, it's right. So refreshing right. just to hear people say that mm-hmm. and have that take. Mm-hmm. It's what I needed at that moment. And it's right. something that I think that, after everything, right. That I need it now. Because mm-hmm. if the first time I read Dune was apotheosis, mm-hmm. was, oh my God, someone else feels this way. Right. Now it's I would say it's Renaissance. Mm. It's rebirthing. Rebirthing. Right. It's what we said. Right. It's going through that and mm-hmm. being able to read this again and things that stick out mm-hmm. now didn't necessarily stick out before. Uh-huh. And it's all just like I say, it's refreshing. Mm-hmm. It's a dip in the pool. It's of knowing that people are capable. Mm-hmm. They are smart. Mm-hmm. They are emotional. Mm-hmm. There are exceptions. Right.
Look, we are not stuck in this. I know it feels as if we mm-hmm. are, and that was the thing. Like, I've only read it, one mm-hmm. time. And I told you that, when I read it, I was like, see, this is what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. This is the next step. And for someone, for me, yeah, because I'm older and I had I had the different transitions. So for me, I always, and I told you, even when we first started, I said, I know that there's enough. I just didn't know, how to express it, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it had not necessarily been expressed, but I knew that it was there. Yeah. And so in reading, Dune, just even the first book, I'm like, see, this is right here. Even like in the mm-hmm. first chapter, I even told you, I'm like, see, this is what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. This is what I mean. I knew that there was another stuff. I just didn't think that it would come in the form of a Frank Herbert mm-hmm. series.
And that other step, right. To review what we talked about in the right. last episode, mm-hmm. is about recognizing, yes, and not sacrificing, mm-hmm. Any of those things that you have made yourself up to be.
That's right.
If you say that you're a human, mm-hmm. right, then the human wouldn't do some things. Right. There are rules, quote unquote, that go with that. Right. Right? That go in following our understanding of what a human is supposed to be, of right. humanity. Mm-hmm. That entails its own ups and its own downs. Mm-hmm. But if that's the world we are choosing to live in, if that's the people we are choosing to be, right. then we have to choose to be that. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that not a lot of people are making that choice. Right. They think being born is enough. Right. Dune tells you that living is always a choice. Right. Being is always a choice. Right. And so you have to choose. Right. You have to choose what it is you're going to be. Mm-hmm. Are you going to be a human or are you going to be an animal? Right. Can you recognize what the true threat is? Right. Can you recognize even then, after the test and then right. going to this new place right. and being uprooted where the threat right. really is?
And from these tests, what is it that you learn? What is it that you take away? And how is it that you apply your newfound knowledge? And so that was the thing with Paul, is that whenever he learned something, mm-hmm. it became applicable. He applied it. It just wasn't stuck with him.
Yeah, and one of a big theme is thinking. Yes. In that Paul was taught very early on mm-hmm. how to think. Mm-hmm. And how to retain information and how to apply it. Right. And how to just glean mm-hmm. like the relevant details right. and the relevant, data, quote mm-hmm. unquote.
Yeah, that's the word.
Mm-hmm. Of any particular situation. Mm-hmm. And you never think about like all of the tools that humanity has at its disposal. Mm-hmm. But these are such cursory things that you don't really, the idea that humanity can't think, mm-hmm. that we can't think, like this simple thing is like has never really occurred to me mm-hmm. until you read something like this and then mm-hmm. you see, just having to reevaluate in myself, mm-hmm. Like the idea of like I said, of bitterness and knowing that when you're bitter, then you're doing something wrong. That's something that I get from Dune.
Right.
And just Dune help to teach me how to think and how to, and how to be a human being, right? And what that necessarily means, and it's it is it is it all lies in where you think the momentum of life comes from,
right,
and where you think power is, and being able to recognize that the distribution of power is one of the big things in Dune, because they know that on Dune there is this thing called the spice melange,
right,
this geriatric drug that can only be found on Arrakis, on Dune, that extends life. That it helps people to live longer. And it tastes like cinnamon,
right,
and it also unlocks the secret potential
right
within humanity.
Right.
It's this crazy drug only found on Arrakis that really is the oil.
Yes.
Of this Imperium.
That's right.
It makes everything move, and
That's
it
right.
can be found only on one place, right? And the Harkonnens, had this planet for generations.
Yes.
So they had this giant stockpile
right.
of spice, and they are exorbitantly wealthy.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, but it's not the spice itself.
Right.
That's and recognize
imagine that, right?
It's not the spice itself. It's the movement of spice. It's how it is distributed throughout the Imperium, throughout the galaxy, that really lets you know where the power lies. And even though that you get spice from Dune really, the people of Arrakis, the freemen, these people who are the most skilled hunters and miners of the spice, they don't play a very big part in its distribution.
Sounds familiar?
Yeah, they don't.
Sounds familiar?
They have no control over this thing. And but yet that's another lie of how powerless the freemen are,
right?
And that they're just these rogue people, and that they don't really have any say in what's going on here. No, the freemen have a goal. They have motive, and they are players on the chessboard. But from a distance you cannot tell, right? Because they've been a footnote for so long, that people up top forget the relevancy of these people, or take advantage of the fact. Yeah. Co-sign them to little parts. We know. Look, I'm alluding to a particular people here.
Right?
but yeah, but and the Duke Leto, the Atreides line in itself, is able to recognize the potential of partnering with these people,
right?
And understanding that it's not the spice, right? That the spice may be the form, but the function of the people who move it, of the people who understand it the best, and that is the people who are able to survive on this harsh desert planet. The mentality that they have. And there's another starting quote that I want to read, just to let you know the type of people that you're dealing with.
Right.
Right. Let me see. It's 184, right? Here's another starting quote here. Ericus teaches the attitude of the knife, chopping off what's incomplete and saying, now it's complete because it's ended here.
That's right.
That's the type of people who live on Dune.
Yeah.
That's the type of mentality we're dealing with.
Right.
The mentality of a knife. If to see something incomplete, you just cut it off immediately when it's over.
Yeah. Sounds familiar?
Sounds familiar. Right?
It's done now. Right.
So that's the type of mentality of that's the true power. That's where it lies.
Right.
In the people, in their myths.
Right.
In the stories that they tell. And that you don't really know what's being played out here. It's not the Baron's story. It's not the Harkonnen story. It's not really even the Atreides story.
Right.
This part of the story is for the freemen, and it's this terrible purpose. It is connected to a people who have been oppressed, who, for generations, like for hundreds of years, they had to deal with the Harkonnens, and it was not pretty having to deal with these people.
Right.
They have been oppressed. They have been brutalized. Their lands have been stolen. Their resources have been taken.
Right.
They're planted a desert.
Yes.
And now, Paul recognizes the thing that is building inside of these people. That is building just in the Imperium in itself. That is building in humanity.
Right.
In how we order ourselves and how we decide to live and all these things and what it's tending towards. This terrible purpose that he himself has become the fulcrum of because he alone can see it. And so we've talked 20 minutes.
Right.
Talked 20 minutes just about that. But let's get into the book proper and what was read, because in the first episode, we talked about a lot of the earlier chapters, and we spent a lot of time on the very first chapter. Right?
Because it really laid the foundation.
It really did lay the foundation of, the power of perception and a lot of the themes of the book and what Paul is going to have to become and what he's going to go through and for the rest of his family and all that stuff. But now we're going to deal with a lot of the ending chapters. Right? In the very last chapter of book 1 of Dune, which is, like I said, paradoxically called Dune.
Dune, right.
But before we get there, there's this little part that I want to read.
Share out.
Because there, I think, a lot of the political scheming, things are kind of a part of what's going on, but it's a part of it. It's not really the point, But in this particular chapter that I'm referencing here, that the Duke Leto is having some kind of a soiree at his house. He's getting all these very powerful, very important people together. To have dinner at his house. And at the very beginning, I just because I like this thematic flair of how water on Dune, even though it is so necessary and it is so strived for, people want it, they need it so much, and water is like the ultimate currency on Dune, even more than spice. Water is equated to weakness.
That's right.
The fact that the freemen and that the native people of Dune, can go without water. Their need for water has been, cooled down to just the necessary. They recycle water from their own bodies. When a person dies, they take the water from their corpse. Water is very important, but they don't have an abundance of it. It's that water starvation that has taught them and made them the people of the night.
That's right.
Whereas the Duke Leto, being the Duke, he has an abundance of water. He has so much water. There's this water coming out the wazoo, this water, and he sees that and he recognizes that for what it is. On a planet like Eric.
That's right.
In a place like Dune.
Well, you ain't gonna make it.
Water is a weakness.
Yes, that's right.
And having so much of it and just being so used to having it on command, having these things at your beck and call, it makes you're on this desert planet, dealing with the freemen in the position that you find yourself in, dealing with the Harkonnens, you're in Canley, this war with this other house, and there's all this water. It just reminds you that you're just a little fish.
That's right.
Just a little grub. You're soft.
Yes.
For all you are, you're soft.
I'm gonna leave here and I'm gonna go elsewhere, and you're like, you're not equipped to even deal with this.
And he sees all, and he knows it. So that's why, some traditions have to change.
That's right.
And he knows that. So he wants to begin to wean his house off of its overdependence, overabundance of water. And he talks about how one of the Harkonnen traditions, when the Harkonnens ruled this planet, is that anytime they will have a feast, they'll have fountains and all this stuff, and they have these great basins of water where you will wash your hands in, and then you take the towels, right, and dry your hands off, and then they'll throw the towels on the ground, and then the people will come and just try to get the drops of water out of the thing, just to show that they had no. Just want to go.
No care in the world.
No care
in
the world.
Yes.
Like we don't need water. That's for you people. We have all the water we need and stuff like that. And the Duke sees this and he's like, yeah, we ain't doing that. We ain't doing that no more.
Yeah.
No more. We all gotta learn.
You better.
No more of this show offiness. No more of this stunting. We got all the water in the world. No. All the water that we have is going to now serve the purpose of the people now. Right? We're going to learn to have to live the way that they live if we want to garner their support. Right. And that's one of the things that is addressed in this earlier chapter. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to say that for later. Because the very last chapter is the one that I really want to talk about. But there's just some things here I want to point out. And now you have this person here. His name is Liet Keynes. Okay, yeah, right. And they call him the Judge of Changes, which means his job is to preside over this battle between the Harkonnens and the Atreides, and to observe the shift of power, the shift of management of Arrakis. And he is in the service of the Emperor, right? But he carries a lot of power with the Freemen. Right. He has a lot of influence with these people. Right. And it's alluded to that, that these people tend to move at his beck and call. Right? For this, servant of the Emperor. He's not supposed to have that much influence among these people, but yet he does. Right? And so Liet, the Keynes himself, is a man of secret depths. That throughout this, party, this get together at the Atreides estate, both Jessica and Paul are being able to, are starting to understand, just how much power this man holds over the Freemen. And we get, in this particular part, we get to see, a reason why. Understanding exactly why, he might have, so much power in the Freeman circles. Now, I'm going to start. Here we go. Keynes looked at Jessica, said, "The newcomer to Arrakis frequently underestimates the importance of water here. You are dealing, you see, with the law of the minimum." She heard the testing quality in his voice, said, "Growth is limited by the necessity which is present in the least amount, and naturally, the least favorable condition controls the growth rate." "It's rare to find members of a great house aware of planetological problems," Keynes said. "Water is the least favorable condition for life on Arrakis, and remember that growth itself can produce unfavorable conditions unless treated with extreme care."
Sounds familiar.
The life on this planet, has gone without this water abundance for so long that introducing this water abundance can have disastrous effects. Because water is the least favorable condition for life on Dune.
Right. And with the Freedmen, right.
It's the reverse. It's the reverse of everywhere else in the Imperium. Right? And just to continue here, Jessica sensed a hidden message in Keen's word, but knew she was missing it. "Growth," she said. "Do you mean Arrakis can have an orderly cycle of water to sustain human life under more favorable conditions?" "Impossible," the water magnet barked. Jessica turned her attention to Butte, the water magnet. "Impossible? Impossible on Arrakis," he said. "Don't listen to this dreamer. All the laboratory evidence is against him." Keynes looked at Butte, and Jessica noted that the other conversations around the table had stopped while people concentrated on this new interchange. "Laboratory evidence tends to blind us to a very simple fact," Keynes said. "The fact is that we are dealing here with matters that originated and exist out of doors, where plants and animals carry on their normal existence." "Normal?" Butte snorted. "Nothing about Arrakis is normal." Quite the contrary, Keen said. Certain harmonies could be set up here along self-sustaining lines. You merely have to understand the limits of the planet and the pressures upon it. It'll never be done, Butte said. The Duke came to a sudden realization, placing the point where Keen's attitude had changed. It had been when Jessica had spoken of holding the conservatory plants in trust for Ericus. What would it take to set up the self-sustaining system? Dr. Keynes, Leto asked. If we get 3% of the green plant element on Ericus involved in forming carbon compounds as foodstuff, we've started a cyclic system, Keynes said. Water's the only problem? The Duke asked. He sensed Keen's excitement. He felt himself caught up in it. Water overshadows the other problems, Keynes said. This planet has much oxygen without its usual concomitants, widespread plant life, and large sources of free carbon dioxide from such phenomena as volcanoes. There are unusual chemical interchanges over large surface area here. Do you have pilot projects? The Duke asked. We've had a long time in which to build up the Tansley effect. Small unit experiments on an amateur basis from which my science may now draw its working facts, King said. There isn't enough water, Butte said. There just isn't enough water. Master Butte is an expert on water, King said. He smiled, turned back to his dinner. The Duke gestured sharply, down with his right hand. I used my left. Barked, no. I want an answer. Is there enough water, Dr. Keynes? Keynes stared at his plate. Jessica watched the emotion on his face. He masked himself well, she thought, but she had him registered now and read that he regretted his words. Is there enough water? The Duke demanded. There may be, Keynes said. He's faking uncertainty, Jessica thought. With his deeper truth since Paul caught the underlying motive, had to use every ounce of his training to mask his excitement. There is enough water, but Keynes doesn't wish it to be known. Our planetologist has many interesting dreams, Butte said. He dreams with the Freeman, of prophecies and messiahs. Now we begin to see why Keynes is able to curry so much favor with the Freeman. That through his science, through his understanding of the topography and ecology and overall interchange of life, and the flow of resources on this planet, he has been able to garner enough water to create a sustainable atmosphere on Dune.
Right.
Without creating this overabundance and without destroying everything that's already there, he can create, a sustainable water cycle on this planet. Right. But he doesn't want for that to be known. Because that's the trump card of the Freeman.
That's right.
Right. He doesn't want that to be known.
Right.
But Paul and Jessica, with their power of observation, keen power of observation, is able to tell that he's holding back. He's holding back that information. He's faking uncertainty, and I just thought that was it's first of all, it underlines how perceptive Jessica and Paul is. That just throughout this entire interchange, throughout this entire chapter, you see them just perfectly.
Line up.
Just this on the ball. He's able to recognize all the little things, what people are hiding, and everything that they're saying, and everybody's choosing their words so carefully. This is a political arena, and battle is being won with wordplay, and everyone's choosing their words so carefully, and what you're saying, what not you're saying, and how you're saying it. All of it is dressed up. The Duke's the one man here who is not playing any of these games. He's cutting straight to the point, because that's just who he is. No, I want a clear answer. Can it? And Keynes, in his excitement, overplayed his hand a bit. And just to what you call it, to get the Duke to back down just a bit, he has to tell a bit of the truth. Which belays the entirety. To people who are able to see it. And I thought that was just so, prevalent, and just underlining how these people have grown strong from their
absence of water.
Yet it's not really the absence of water that has given them strength. It's their striving for it. Like I said, recognizing where the power is, because these people want water. They need water. more than just about anyone else on the entire planet.
Right.
So it's not the lack of water that has made them strong.
Right.
It's that striving for it and how they're finding it and reserving it and conserving it that has made, them into that type of people, the people of the knife.
Right.
Sounds... And that alludes to a conversation that we had in an earlier episode where we talked about how our struggles have formed us. Right? But the Freeman, I would say it's just as unintentional. Right? Yeah. That they don't see what they might lose if they have all their needs met, with this water. Right. Which is a point that we see begin to take form in some of the later books. Right. But we as a people, I'm talking about us, us as Black people, we, all of our culture, everything that we are is hinged upon our struggle for actualization in this current system. We want to be people. But our society that we live in robs us of that agency. Right. Right. And we think that, it's through that emptiness that has given us our particular perspective, our strength. Right. But that's not the case. It's not the emptiness. It's the recognition of it. It's us striving to fill that space and trying to be people that has given us our longevity, that has given us our strength, and so in asking to end that struggle, to wanting to end that struggle is cutting off that strength. And we have a very, this word is out of date, but I would say subconscious, understanding of what that means to us. So that's why we do things. Right. That instead of taking away from the struggle leads into it. We become a people of struggle. Right. Just like the Freemen here are people of struggle, are people of the knife, are people of absolutes who cut it off and say that that's it. It's over because it's been ended. Right. Sounds familiar, right? That's the type of people they are. That's the type of people we are. I don't know if this was intentional from Frank Herbert. Right. Frank Herbert is a white man. Yeah, he's a white guy. Right. So I don't know if he's out of Washington State. Yeah, right. I don't know if he's. I don't know the relationship he has with the Black community, but he has his pick. And the type of people that we are. And he know it's coming because he talks about it. He talks about it later on. Yeah, he knows it's coming. Right. He knows it's coming. What we're owed and what that means for everyone. And there's nothing pretty. Not for us, not for them, not for anyone. And I think in this, you begin to see exactly what that means. But the Freemen are people of a dream. They dream of prophecy and of messiahs, of leaders who can bring them the water. Right. That's why Keynes, however you pronounce it, it's Kynes. So I said Kynes. You say Keynes. I say Kynes all the time, right? But yeah, he's a man who is able to bring actualization to these people's dreams, and that's what gives him his power. That's what gives Paul, his power among his. He was called here, and he's a child of prophecy. They called him the Liaison El Gaib. When he first came to, when he first got here, because there's a prophecy that the Bene Gesserit planted on this planet, that there will be a child of the Bene Gesserit, right? Who will be able to lead, the Freemen, in their quest, right? For their prophecy, right? Sounds familiar, right? And when you said the prophecy lives on this planet, it moves. There's a particular, I would say, magic here. That it is that because even in this chapter, you see, how Jessica sees how superstitious, the Freemen are, right? That how superstitiously Keynes has become in living amongst them. That prophecy is a living thing here. It's one of the things that keeps the dream alive. Right. That makes the struggle worth it is this prophecy. Right? Come on now. Yeah, right. Come on. I read it the first time I read this book, like, who you talking about? Yeah. Even, who you talking about?
We know who the Freemen are here.
It may not be. It may. I don't know how intentional it is.
Right.
I don't know how intentional it is, but Frank Herbert is a very smart man.
He knows what's coming down the pipeline. Right.
It might be very intentional. But,
right. I don't know. Right. We don't know.
I see so much of ourselves
in the Freemen.
The Freemen. And the type of people that they are. And just how short-sighted they have become.
Right.
And not truly being able to recognize what they are. And I guess it, just like how Frank Herbert is able to point that out in us, it is up to Paul to be able to point that out in them. But that's not his role.
Right.
He recognizes the
short-sightedness.
He's a product of it.
Correct. Right.
Of short-sightedness. As we're going to
continue right along. Right.
But he's a product of that.
Right.
And
what does that and what happens when you're steadily cutting off? What happens when you constantly cut off?
You give so much sacrifice.
That's right.
So much.
Right.
I'm saying
right.
We have to recognize where the threat is and where the power is. What moves us cannot be sustained. It's going to come to an end one of these days. For them, for us.
Right.
This is not sustainable.
Right.
And it's been happening for a very long time. For thousands upon thousands of years. It always finds a new thing. But you're going to run out. This is not sustainable. It is not.
Right. It's not. Right.
It's been here. Right. It's not sustainable. This is going to fall apart at some point.
And who are you?
Who are you then?
Who are you then?
What you say you ought to be then is the thing you ought to be now.
That's right. I know that should sound familiar to you all because
we've said that before.
We've said it before, and some of you all are great, students and listeners of Amos Wilson, and I know he has said that. I don't know how many times.
Yes.
So that tone is very familiar. At least I'm thinking that it should be familiar. So let's keep going.
So that was that chapter. And like I said, we're painting a very broad strokes here, just jumping around. But in the next chapter here, there is another hidden quote that I would like to read. There is no escape. We pay for the violence of our ancestors.
Hallelujah. You can't.
This book is so good.
Right.
It's the best book. But in this book, in this chapter, in this chapter, there's been hints of there being a traitor in the Atreides house.
Dun, dun.
Right. And at the very beginning of the book, we learn exactly. We know who the traitor is.
Right.
Is laid out very early on. But that's not the point. The point we know who the traitor is. The point is that they don't know who the traitor is. And they're trying to figure it out. Now, the traitor, is... you can read in the note and find out for yourself who the traitor is.
Yeah.
But it's not Jessica.
No, it's not Jessica.
But there has been some suspicion.
Yes, it's been some... Right,
which definitely has been, put there by the Harkonnens. We see that themselves, but,
You know how much I hate the Harkonnens.
Yeah. The Harkonnens are meant to be the bad guys, and they are the bad guys.
Yes.
They are the bad guys.
They
are a mess.
Yes. We know who the Harkonnens... Yes, that's right.
Atreides are.
That's right. The
Atreides are people of honor and dignity and morals and all that stuff.
Yeah, the Harkonnens...
The Harkonnens are the representation of decadence.
Yes, greed. Yeah, just disgusted.
The inverse of
they
are the enemies.
They are
the perfect enemies. They are
disgusting. They are disgusting.
If you can see the face that she's cutting right now,
they are so nasty. They're so disgusting. They're so foul. It just oh my God.
But
I hate that they were even anyway because they come up there in the other. I'm like, won't they just? They just die. I hate them.
As we're going to see later on in this very chapter, that the line between the Atreides and the Harkonnens is
very thin. It's thin,
almost non-existent.
It's thin.
In this particular chapter that we're going to read now, I'm not going to read the entirety of it.
Right.
There's just a particular part in here.
Yeah.
I'd
Read
like.
that. Read that caption again, because
Oh yeah.
yes.
There is no escape. We pay for the violence of our sins. From the collected, no, not our sins. There is no escape. We pay for the violence of our ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
From the collected sayings of Muad'Dib.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is one of the things that he
Yeah.
says. And in this particular chapter, we see that there's suspicions of a traitor who they trade his house, and they think that it might be Jessica,
Right.
from some information that they got from a part of a message and stuff like that.
Right.
It's damaged enough, and it's so small that it's enough to be believed.
Right.
If it was overwhelming evidence, they wouldn't believe it. But there's just a hint of it enough there, just a little of enough left behind.
Does that sound
to make
familiar?
It
Does that sound like
right?
That just sounds
and
like
so,
something, right?
Throughout this, Jessica's being watched, and when she figures this all out, she is pissed.
Right.
She's very upset.
You about to get this
because
work?
She is not a traitor.
Right.
And so she calls in Thufir Howard, the spy master.
Right.
And we're gonna have this out right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know, if you've read the book earlier, that the Duke doesn't believe this for a second. He doesn't believe that Leto, that his concubine, his wife, for all intents and purposes, is working against him. He doesn't believe it.
Of course, right.
But he wants to bait out the true traitor. He wants to bait out the Harkonnens. So he's playing like he does.
Right.
So there's a particular coldness between between Leto and Jessica. That Jessica is trying to figure out why.
Right.
But the Duke lets Paul know in the earlier chapter that if I die, before all of this comes to a head, it is your responsibility.
Right.
To tell Jessica that I had absolutely no suspicions of her
whatsoever. Right.
Whatsoever. That all of this was just an overlay for the underplay.
Right.
And
so
we're going to see all of that take form in the later chapter. I know I'm hyping up this later chapter.
It's really good.
But it is really good.
Right.
It's worth it. But in this one, she is having it out.
Right.
With Howard. They're going back and forth here. And there's a very particular part here that I think really underlines, humans in general.
Right.
Right? Okay, so here it is. She sighed. Thufir, I want you to examine your own emotional involvement in this. And wait, before I continue. Thufir Howard is a mentat.
Yes.
Which means he is the human computer. Right? Because as I've read in the earlier chapter, there are no computers.
Right.
All that stuff is gone.
Yes.
Instead of honing machines, this Imperium runs on honing people.
Right.
And they have taught people, to be those things, so they do not have this over-reliance on technology.
Right.
And so being a mentat, he is a human computer. And now Paul also has the potential to be a mentat. He is also a mentat.
Right.
But,
yeah, Paul is
everything.
Yeah, but I say Paul is everything, right.
He also had, but Thufir is a mentat. He's a human computer, and his job is to draw connections, is to extrapolate connections, and to see, to see
his computations and how we put everything together.
The enemy moves and how the enemy is moving. He's a mentat. That's his job.
Right.
And so he's been trained to be that. And right now, Jessica is questioning that training, calling into question the training that he's been through. Right, so let me begin. She sighed. Thufir, I want you to examine your own emotional involvement in this. The natural humans are animal without logic. Your projections of logic onto all affairs is unnatural, but suffered to continue for its usefulness. You're the embodiment of logic, a mentat. Yet your problem solutions are concepts that, in a very real sense, are projected outside yourself. They're to be studied and rolled around, examined from all sides. You think now to teach me my trade? He asked, and he did not try to hide disdain in his voice. Anything outside yourself. This you can see and apply your logic to it, she said. But it's a human trait that when we encounter personal problems, those things most deeply personal are the most difficult to bring out for our logic to scan. We tend to flounder around, blaming everything but the actual deep-seated thing that's really chewing on us. You're deliberately attempting to undermine my faith in my abilities as a mentat, he rasped. Were I to find one of our people attempting thus to sabotage any other weapon in our arsenal, I should not hesitate to denounce and destroy them. The finest Mentats have a healthy respect for the error factor in their computations. I've never said otherwise. I'm just going to stop there because the big part here is her laying out, the fallacy of human logic. Right. And when I read this the first time, I felt it, but not how I feel it now.
Right.
Right. Rereading this particular part, all I could see was humanity in itself, just because I've often talked about how a lot of the things that we do, that we give power, don't exist. Right? They're all just things that we made up. And logic in itself is another human invention. Those things that are logical, that are comfortable, are that's what makes them logical. That's what makes them make sense to us. But there is no objective measure for these things. It's all just us creating this particular sense. And in applying logic, you have to be wary of that. That there really is no such thing. And the only thing that you're able to truly recognize in that is the human pattern. And what we're doing. We humans are, like you say, are animals. We are, naturally illogical. But we have a tendency toward the logical because we have a tendency toward, like I said many a times, homeostasis, to that familiarity, to that normalcy. And if I can just rant for a little moment here, right? If I can just rant for a little moment,
okay, you can rant.
Our world, as it is today, is moved by three things: debt, oil, and information. The entire world is moved on these three things. We talk about how America is an empire, but that's how they've been able to create and maintain their monopoly, on this gap between America and the rest of the world, because the rest of the world, say you're a country, right, and you have oil, you sell off that oil, right, to these other companies that are able to develop it and make and refine it and all these things, which is the only currency that any of these businesses actually care for, right? But you're selling off the resources of your country, which means you don't have any money to actually develop your country. So you take out a loan from the World Bank or the Federal Reserve and all these things. So you take out the loan from these organizations, and the interest is so high that now you're indebted to them. But you use the money from that to be able to develop and sell more oil. So you get deeper and deeper into debt with these companies, and you also get deeper and deeper into debt with the World Bank and all these things, right? And now you are entirely dependent upon that debt to keep your country moving, right? Now, America has this giant gap with the rest of the world because of its debt, because America's debt is the world's debt, and they're able to leverage that power to maintain itself, right? And again, you see this being played out. Now, in the last episode, I talked about how, well, not in the last episode, the episode before last, I talked about how we are people who have sacrificed so much, who have given so much, that all we are our sacrifices, are the things that we have given. And now, like, you just see how, that the system is moved by those things that you don't have, by oil, debt, and information, right? By the people who are able to control these things. It is the debt. It is the debt that America has that gives its power, its leverage over everything. The absence of power in and of itself has become power. The illusion of strength and wealth. There is no actual wealth anymore. Everyone's in debt. There is no wealth, but it's the illusion of it, the idea of it, that makes everything move. Right? So I'm like,
so
when
who's going to cut the oil?
No, it's moreover that when we say that we want, like I say, it's our struggle to actualize, to be a part of this, and to be humans in this system that has given us our strength.
Mm.
But what does being human, quote unquote, a person in this system looks like?
Mm-hmm.
What it looks like is debt.
Mm-hmm.
What it looks like is going without, is being without.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it means to be a part of this system. That's what we're fighting for. That's the short-sightedness.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes the world move. What makes the money move? The debt,
mm-hmm.
the oil, the information.
Mm-hmm.
All these things that have been used to all of these things have been used to disenfranchise you, to take all, not just you, but everyone, entire countries, entire people, and they're still playing this game because they're still trying to be. Now, this system is unsustainable. It is literally killing our world.
Mm-hmm.
With climate change and all this stuff. We all know this. And yet, we're still trying to be a part of it. We're still trying to be a part of it that runs, like I said, it runs off profit. What is profit? Profit is a loss.
Mm-hmm.
Profit is what you lose and what someone else gains.
Right.
And this is what frustrates me about us.
Mm-hmm.
We say we know better.
Right.
And you want to be a part of this. This is the fallacy of human logic.
Mm-hmm.
This is what Jessica's reminded me of.
Mm-hmm.
That we look for everything. We can apply that logic to everything.
Mm-hmm.
We look at everything outside of ourselves.
Right.
To show us what the problem is. Well, the problem is us.
Right.
And how we have decided what humanity and society is supposed to look like.
Right.
And we keep doing this. And I don't understand. We're idiots. We're idiots. We're sitting here. Our planet is literally dying.
Mm-hmm.
And we're debating on who the next president is going to be and who these things. And then we say we need the leadership. We need the people in place. That human beings existed before presidents.
Right.
And congressmen, and, mayors and governors. We used to do things before this.
Right.
Our world is dying, and you sit here telling me about racism and all these things, and it's like you're struggling and fighting against a thing that is taking you further and further into it.
It takes you away from your work.
I have a thing here that I wrote down. Right. Because this is thing that popped into my head when I was reading this. When you're not free, there is no difference between submission and rebellion. Period. We live in a system that robs you of your freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, it's run off debt.
Right.
You have no freedom. It has been constrained to such an extent that you have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter if you submit to it or fight against it, as long as it is this,
right?
It moves.
Mm-hmm.
It continues to exist. It continues to persist.
Mm-hmm.
We know what rebellion looks like, and how many times, like I said, we're protesting, doing all these things, and we don't know how it's feeding back into the system.
Mm-hmm.
Right
there
here,
it is, right? I mean, even Harold Cruz even mentioned something to that same sentiment, right? And he was talking about, I think, integration, basically. And he was saying, that, militant integration, passive integration, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's integration, right? So doing it militantly, that's what he was saying, or doing it passively, you're still feeding into the same. You're still feeding into the system. It's still the end result is the same. And so even when you don't have freedom, right? Like you said, submission or rebellion,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
When you're
in this, right,
to be a part of a world that robs you of your freedom,
right?
It doesn't matter if you rule it,
right,
or knuckle under it,
right?
You have no freedom.
Right. And I know that but again, I understand if you think that, this is the way. because this has been the way for 100 years, thousands of years. You understand me? Then you continue on as you have. But we think that there is another way, and I think that most of our listeners think that there is another way. They just haven't conceptualized it just yet, or don't know how to necessarily, formulate it. And so for me, like I said, when I read, Frank Herbert, I was like, see, this is it right here. This is it. This is what I've been talking about right here. So yeah, and again, like I said, I didn't think that it would come from a
but like when like I said, the first time I read Dune, it was apotheosis. Right now it's Renaissance. And I'm understanding just how much of everything that we do. We hit the hour mark.
Yeah,
and we haven't even gotten to the part that I wanted to talk about so much. But
So maybe we'll hit it because I don't want the how it happened the last time.
I think we could just
we'll stop here. You want to stop here? Okay.
Okay, we've talked about, but this is
Just throw it out there, and then we can pick it up if you want to do it that way.
You know what? I just cause this this is the one part that I really wanted to talk about. And we ended up talking about everything but it. But I think we could just. I think what I'm going to do is that I'm going to save this one chapter right here to be its own thing.
Yeah.
Right. But everything leading up to that was a part of this episode. So yeah. And so we're going to stop. We're going to stop at there today. So right now, if you're reading along, we're stopping at 200.
Yeah.
Page 200, the very last chapter of the first part of Dune.
Right. And again, if your book, the pages might lined up differently or whatever, but in any case,
like I said, the last chapter before, that's where we're at right now. And really, in conclusion,
yeah, I think that last chapter needs to be its own.
Yeah,
because we have a lot of.
But in conclusion, everything that has led up so far that we've read and talked about so far, like I said, it's about perception. It's about being able to understand where the true threat lies, and it's about understanding that especially for Leto, for the Atreides family, for what they're going through right now, that they are in a position that is untenable. They know they're losing it. They know they've lost. But now it's about trying to find a way to really rebirth.
Right. Come out of that loss. Right.
To come out of that loss. They need to have their own renaissance. Their own, rebirth. Right. But they know where it comes from. They know the people they have to turn to. But they also, what Paul knows is that these people that they have to turn to, and the fate of this imperium, the fate of this galaxy, this empire, the fate of empire builders, of conquerors, of rebels, of leaders and tyrants, of all these things, all of it is tending toward destruction. It's tending toward this giant bubbling. This what he calls jihad.
Right.
This endless wave of death.
Right.
That we are all contributing towards. Now that's the true threat. It's one that is threatening to consume him, consume the Freeman, consume everyone.
Right.
Right? And he knows that him being on Arrakis, that the Harkonnens, that all of the great houses, and all of the minor houses, and just everything that they're doing, all of this is lending toward this terrible purpose, this jihad that will roll over everything.
Right. We have set up something that is going to snowball.
It is going to eat us
alive. Right. It's going to just roll and roll and roll.
That's the only sustainable part of it.
Yeah.
Is the suffering.
Yes, right.
And the death.
Right. And that's what this, for us, has been. You know, death, destruction, mayhem, mental illness, confusion. That's what it's been.
And yet we're still struggling to be a part of it. We're still holding on to that dream. Because we haven't learned.
Right.
We haven't learned. And that's why we do all of this. It was to give us the space to be able to learn. But we haven't not.
Right.
You know, and if you cannot see all of the things that are lending itself toward this jihad, toward this wave of violence, you know, that we think that we're living in, you know, but trust me, it has not come.
Right.
You'll know when it's here, you know, and it is coming. It is coming.
Right.
Everything that
everything
doing,
is the groundwork has been like, how can it not come?
How we're running our world, how we're ordering ourselves, the absence, the holes that we're hollow. We've been made hollow. The world runs on hollowness.
Right.
And it's justifying it. It's telling you it can be no other way.
Right.
You know? We're fighting to be a part of a world that is suicidal. That is killing itself. You know? And we cannot see in our rebellion.
Right.
In our submission. In whatever thing that we try to be. As long as it's a part of this.
Right. It's doomed.
It's doomed.
It's doomed.
And it's dooming us.
Right.
And you know what happens when empires fall? People don't learn. Evidently, we don't.
Yeah.
Because when empires fall, we just make other ones.
Right.
We just make more.
Yeah, we talk about the glory of the empire, you know, and how, you know, we long for the days of, you know.
The world has, society has crumbled so many times.
Right.
You know, there was the Bronze Age collapse. There was the collapse of Rome. There was the Civil War, World War I, World War II. All these things always coming to a close, and yet we never learn. We never learn. All of that leads to Paul.
Yeah, but you're going to learn then.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Because
it's going to take a while.
You may not be able to learn. But Paul and the Atreides will teach you.
Yeah. It is a lesson that...
And it is a lesson that you're going to learn this lesson the same way that you learn all the other lessons.
That's right.
We, like I said, this is not natural for us. Never make that mistake. This is not normal. We've been corralled.
Good word, yeah.
Into this. Right. You know, by people who are looking to maintain their position and by people who are looking to gain it. That's why we're here.
Yep. And this is where we are.
Ambition has crippled us. Right? And this is where we are. And it all leads to jihad, to terrible purpose, to protests and suffering. It leads to doom. It leads to arrogance. It leads to people of the knife, to this fatalistic outlook on the world that you can only see where it ends. You know?
Right.
And it's like, this is the thing that we don't want.
Right.
That's the people we don't want to be. But it's already taken form. It has taken form. Time and time again.
Right.
You know? The objective now, the lesson now, is how to not do that. How to not have another Bronze Age collapse.
That's right.
You know, another falling of Rome. Another war where we don't learn.
Right.
You know? And in our final chapter.
That's where... That's right on the money, right.
So, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments. Right. And thank you for hearing.